They put children in small wooden boats. They learned how to read clouds the way others read scripture. They turned rivers into highways and coasts into contact zones. When they left home, they didn't know all they'd take with them. Names, laws, songs, maybe a few stolen silver bits. But they understood one thing clearly. Horizons were invitations, not limits. We call them Vikings, a word that starts fights in lecture halls because it's both imprecise and irresistible. But whether you call them Northmen, Danes, Russ, or simply those jerks who showed up on our shore, the story is the same delicious human tangle. People pushed by weather and want, pulled by curiosity and greed. We're going to pull that tangle apart, gently, thoroughly, and answer the questions that keep people glued to the screen. Who were they? Where did they go? How did they fight? What did they leave behind? And finally, how exactly did the Viking story end? First, the word Viking is one of those historical shortcuts that gets abused. In Old Norse, Vikinger probably meant a person who went on an expedition, a raider, a seafarer, someone who did the particular job of going on the sea to take or trade. That means most Scandinavians were not Vikings all the time. Most were farmers, fishers, artisans. Viking describes a practice, not a people. Why does this matter? Because when we blur the label, we end up with cartoons, horned helmets, nonstop pillage, or a single Viking culture stamped across centuries. The truth is messier and more interesting. Viking activity, raiding, trading, exploring, peaked between roughly 793 and 1066, but the roots reach earlier and the aftereffects ripple much later. So when someone says Viking, ask, do you mean the action? The person? The myth? That little linguistic trap is where a lot of confusion starts and where good stories begin. Picture Scandinavia in the early Middle Ages, a stitched landscape of sheltered bays, narrow arable plots, and forests deep enough to swallow a day. The climate was tough, the soil was thin, but one thing the North had in spades: timber, trees that made ships. Geography shaped imagination. Inland travel was hard, so the sea became the easiest road. Communities were small and local authority was thin. No super king sat comfortably anywhere for long. The result? People who were used to fending for themselves, organizing in small bands, and fixing solutions with whatever they had, and that included ships. But why leave? There are practical answers. Population pressures in good harvest years, local disputes, and the simple arithmetic of inheritance that left younger sons with no land. There were also dazzling incentives abroad. Monasteries full of silver, prosperous riverside towns unprepared for a sudden fleet, and thriving eastern markets eager for furs and slaves. And finally, a cultural answer, a society that prized reputation, stories of glory, and names that traveled. A voyage could turn a nobody into somebody whose name would be sung at the Longhouse. So they launched. They left not because they were monsters or wanderers, but because the sea offered practical routes, profit, and a chance at a remembered name. If the Viking era has a technology that explains everything, it's the ship. The longship was a marvel of lightweight strength, flexible, fast, and shallow enough to slip into rivers and estuaries. That meant the same boat that could cross the North Sea could slide up a river, cut through a woodland creek, and dump 20 men on an undefended monastery or market town. They were masters of hybrid spaces, not only sea or land, but both. Navigation wasn't random. These seamen read birds, seaweed, and clouds. They had techniques, possibly optical tricks like sunstones to find the sun through cloud, and centuries of oral practice passed from hand to hand. Add an astonishing seamanship and a culture willing to risk a voyage, and you've got a recipe for exploration on top of raiding. Iceland, Greenland, and even parts of North America saw Norse footprints long before Columbus's shadow fell on those shores. Remember, the ships made them mobile, but the people made them adaptable. In each port and river bend, they met new cultures, and they learned to trade, to serve as mercenaries, to settle. Mobility forced hybrid identities. The Viking reputation for violence is not a myth, but understanding how they fought matters. They favored speed and surprise. A dawn landing followed by a spear line could rout an unprepared village. The shield wall, tight, disciplined, and ferocious, turned groups of raiders into cohesive units. Weapons were practical: axes, brutal and cheap; spears, versatile and economical; and occasionally swords for wealthier men. Helmets existed. Horn once. Not historical. Those are pageantry. But raiding was often a business model. Take portable wealth, silver, livestock, people, and move quickly. Enslavement was a grim reality. Captives fed markets from the Islamic world to Byzantium. Yet the same hands that could take also traded. Glass beads from the east, Arab silver in Scandinavian hoards, Byzantine silks. Sometimes a galloping reputation preceded them, and a city paid Danegeld, tribute, to avoid being burned. Sometimes towns hired Vikings as mercenaries. These were not simple marauders. They were actors in a complex, interlinked medieval economy. The moral story is ugly. Violence was real and often efficient. But framing Vikings only as villains misses the point that they were also traders, settlers, and state-makers. Here's where the story flips from raid to settlement. In England, Ireland, Normandy, and parts of the Baltic, Scandinavian settlers put down roots. Cities like Dublin and York began as forts and markets and turned into cosmopolitan hubs. In Normandy, Vikings were given land and, within a generation or two, became the Normans, adopting language, law, and Christianity. In the East, Varangians mixed with Slavs and Finns and built political nodes that would become medieval Russia. And don't forget the women. When men left for voyages, women ran farms, managed property, and negotiated alliances, legally empowered in ways that surprised many modern viewers. Archaeology keeps surprising us. High-status female burials with weapons point to women who may have had roles beyond the domestic. Whether as landholders, powerful kingkeepers, or even combatants, Viking women shaped the outcomes of conquest and settlement. Law, assemblies called things, were crucial. They were public, oral, and performative spaces where disputes were settled and reputation was adjudicated. These institutions mattered because they gave structure to communities that were otherwise loosely organized, and they survived in new forms long after the ships stopped appearing on foreign coasts. People loved definitive endings. The Viking Age has a satisfying candidate. 1066, the year William of Normandy, himself descended from Norse stock, crossed the Channel, and changed England. But end is a blunt word. The Viking era folded into medieval Europe through conversion, consolidation, and cultural assimilation. Christianity offered models of kingship and fiscal tools, tithes, taxes, that made centralized states more viable. Local elites adopted Christian identities because it made governing easier. Over time, that shifted the social incentives away from raiding. Yet the end wasn't erasure. Norse blood and names remain in place names from the Irish Sea to Normandy. Legal customs, maritime tech, and even vocabulary survived. Norse sagas, finally written down in Christian Iceland, give us a hybrid of myth and memory that still thrills readers. And archaeologists keep finding surprises: ships intentionally buried, hoards tucked in peat, diet analyses that tell us who moved where. The Viking story didn't vanish. It changed shape and became part of the medieval fabric that made modern Europe. So when we ask, what happened to the Vikings? The answer is both simple and paradoxical. Their age ended as their practices became less useful and their societies more settled. But their influence in law, language, craft, genetics, and story is still with us. They were not just raiders or conquerors. They were settlers, administrators, traders, shipwrights, poets, parents, killers, and peacemakers. They were, in short, human. A world shaped by people who treated the sea as a road and the unknown as an opportunity. The Vikings rewrote maps and remade lives. They taught Europe how to move, how to trade, how to rule, and, painfully, what violence can do. Their story resists tidy moralization because it contains every human contradiction: creativity and cruelty, curiosity and calculation, the desire to belong and the drive to roam. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next story. Thanks for watching.